Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining our CKAN Monthly Live number 19. I understand that in some parts of the world now it's the peak of the summer, and many of you are probably taking a well-deserved break. So I really appreciate your presence here. I am very sure that this session will be super valuable and insightful, because we're having the post-project team here, many experts. Bob is here, Joe Natividad. I didn't see Nora. I'm not sure if she's here. David Walker, Ross Rayleigh, Steven Saylor, Liz Monk is here, Alice Silva, Sami Beck, many people from... The first ones were from University of Pittsburgh, and the second, Joel and Sami are from that here, and the rest are from the University of Pittsburgh. So we are going to have a very engaging discussion about the early observations of the CKAN ecosystem from the post team. Their insights are based on long ecosystem discovery efforts and community suggestions from the sense-making workshops, which some of us attended probably. And just to quickly set the stage before I give them the mic. So last year, if you remember, the US National Science Foundation initiated the POSE funding program, and the POSE stands for Pathways to Enable Open Source Ecosystems. This actually sparked the collaboration between the University of Pittsburgh and that here, leading to them securing a grant to develop a plan for strengthening the CKAN ecosystem. It's really this is really exciting project for everyone. And yeah, in a few minutes, we will dive deeper into their findings. Before I hand over the mic to our guests though, I just want to say a few housekeeping items. Let's first start with the agenda. So introduction, I'm soon about to finalize my introduction. Then we're going to have a presentation by the post-project team. Then we're going to have a Q&A session. Then we're going to have community announcements and sharing if we have some. And then we are closing. Now, regarding the Q&A session, you're very encouraged to ask questions. There are two ways to ask a question. You can raise a hand and go ahead if you're feeling brave today. Or if you're not feeling brave today, you can just drop your question in the chat and I'll bring it up for you. We're all friends here, so no worries. The next thing is the meeting document. I just dropped the link to this meeting document, but I will drop it again because there is no history in Google Meet. So this is basically our single source of truth document. We have all the links there that you might need, including a field where you can suggest a topic for the next meetup, or you can add some things to the agenda, or you can leave your contact information. As you know, we always encourage you to leave your name, affiliation, what brings you to CKAN. And also you can find all sorts of links to our social media channels. I need to flag to people that the meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. With that being said, I think my introduction is done. And I can hand over to one of our guests. I don't know who's about to start, but
Joel and I will get us rolling. So we appreciate the introduction, and you made it so that I don't really have to introduce a whole lot. So I appreciate that as well. So I'm Bob Gradeck. I'm at the University of Pittsburgh and have been one of the people working on the POSE project. And so, it's been really interesting over the last 9 months or so to kind of learn more about how the whole CKAN ecosystem operates. And it's an ecosystem that we depend on for our work at the university, because we manage a CKAN repository in partnership with our city and county. So we host a lot of data and have built a lot of data pipelines and build tools with CKAN. But this is like our first deep dive into building relationships within the ecosystem. And it's been, a really interesting and great experience for us. And it's been really important to have Joel and Sami from DAT here as partners on this project. And feel free to jump in, Joel. But it's helping to navigate such a diverse community, like spread all over the place, doing all sorts of different things, would have been impossible without them.
No, thanks, Bob. I mean, we played the role of navigator, but we also feel fortunate to have been, part of your CKAN journey when we helped you set up the CKAN portal 7 years ago. But since then, the team has been self-sufficient. So Sammy and I, we've been involved in the CKAN ecosystem for more than 10 years, and it's been interesting for us as well because we established all these relationships over the years, but now with this project, we were able to really take a bigger perspective of CKAN, not just as a tool we use, but as an ecosystem. And we'd love to start sharing what we found during the study.
Yeah, and I think our process, and you're going to learn more about that in just a second, but we engaged in a whole ecosystem discovery process with our team. So we did over 20 interviews with probably over 30, 35, 40 people, just one-on-one conversations or small group conversations. And we also did a lot of work to analyze artifacts from the ecosystem. So things like how many sites have been using CKAN, what extensions do they have, and things like that. Also developed a timeline that you're going to see in a little bit. And we're now in the middle, or actually next week, we'll be closing out our sense-making workshops where we can kind of get some feedback from the community here as we will wrap up the project. But hopefully part of that wrap-up is going to include development of a phase 2 proposal to the NSF, which would provide additional resources to the ecosystem. So we want to find out what kind of things could strengthen the ecosystem, what can we include in our proposal, and if we're successful, that funding would hopefully implement a lot of those kind of things that you want to see happen. So it's been really important to be here working on this, and the way that we've kind of conceived this ecosystem, we've looked at it. What roles do people play? And we know there are steward roles, core team members. There are consultants like Joel and Sammy that use it to integrate CKAN into different data systems. There are individual contributors of code and documentation. There are community builders, and I think Anna, you do a lot of that work along with Alex, and even organizations like ours that have been adopters or even end users. So we kind of thought about it in all those different roles and talked to a lot of different people. And one of those artifacts that we have developed from those conversations is from Dr. Elise Silva. So she's really developed a really nice summation of all those interviews. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Silva now from the Pittsburgh Airport, who's going to walk us through those. You ready?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. And you're welcome to share the blog post too. So. And I should just say, while you're getting that squared away, we're going to just hand off a piece of the presentation to each of our team members to walk you through the work, and then leave you with a link to where you can find all of these to dig in deeper.
All right, I'm sorry. My connection's very slow, so I'm just going to talk, and hopefully you can hear me. I apologize. Yeah, I'm a qualitative researcher at the University of Pittsburgh, a recent graduate, and I've been really excited to be on this team to study the ecosystem. And my background is studying information ecosystems, so a little bit different, but tangential enough to be helpful, I think. So as Bob said, we included in our initial analysis data set of interviews, over 20 and over 30 people were part of that associated with the CKAN ecosystem. And I'm just going to go through our method and our process a little bit. It mattered a great deal for the team to solicit interviews from international users, a wide and diverse pool of user types so that our sample would be somewhat representative of the different types of people who are using the CKAN ecosystem. It was an unstructured data set, and it consisted of notes taken during each interview by members of the research team. And all of those notes then were standardized prior to my analysis, my coding of them. When I coded the notes, they were coded using constructivist grounded theory. And what that means, it's a type of qualitative analysis that seeks to both recognize and attempts to account for the subjective nature of qualitative research and the researcher's role in interacting with participant data. We used a hybrid open and closed coding approach. And so what that meant was we had some ideas that we wanted to look for in the data set. And we had those before we started coding, but we also remained open to new ideas and words and themes and topics as we interacted with the interviews. And then finally, I used a descriptive coding method, which really just means coding according to topic. So we pulled topics out of these interviews as opposed to using exact words or language or using sentiment, for instance, or other ways of doing that. We then categorized and thematized those codes and used a reflective approach to identify patterns. And reflexive coding really just allows us to iteratively interact with data and ultimately find stories in it, which is what we will relay to you today. Some of those findings, some of which may be surprising to you and others which may not. And then we did some basic textual analysis and querying to understand thematized patterns. And yeah, I think Joel just put in the report there, so you can also take a look at that. And Bob, is that what you needed from me?
Yeah, I think that'd be fine. Even just some of the findings that jumped out at you as an observer of the not the transcripts, but the interview notes and things. Just the overall top level would be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so going in, we kind of hypothesized that we would find things about onboarding, the need to connect with existing users, and kind of improve support and documentation. As an outsider and as somebody who's interested in human interaction, I was interested and excited to see a lot of discussion about accessibility within the ecosystem. So making sure we're improving connections across the world, across user types, and also a lot of discussion about values that surround this work. Values about open data, values that are organizational, values that are personal, about giving back. So a lot of people relying on and using that type of language to discuss why they're a member of this, why their organizations are members of this, and why they want to build this community and this ecosystem.
Yeah, that was one of those things that jumped out at me too from the work and just the conversations that we had. Just everybody's here because they value openness, transparency, they like working together, and you know, those kind of things continue to bring people back. Yeah, any other thoughts on that one? But I think like the materials are there in the link, and so we invite you to dive into that. And we're kind of like here to provide you a broad overview. So I just wanted to say thanks, Elise.
Yeah.
And
if anyone has questions about what that method looked like, I'm happy to answer those. So.
And to that end, actually, I just wanted to call out that we integrated the commenting on the blog post. So if you want to either contact Dr. Silva directly, or share your perspective on the blog post itself, yeah, please do.
Yeah, we would love that type of feedback. Feedback's also one of those things that I think we cover in there too. So now to move on to some other pieces of our work over the last several months. I guess I can either turn it over to Ross, and if he wants to be joined by David and Steve, or if Sammy wants to go. Are you ready, Ross? You want to show some of that? So Ross, you want to just introduce yourself and talk about it, and I'll just give you a few minutes, and I'll just be here in the background.
Let me see, actually, I can. Does that work? Can people see that? Ah, there we go. Okay.
Yep, it's
Yes.
good.
Okay, good. So I'm going to talk hopefully quickly about a CKAN instance analysis that was performed. The full text of it is on our site, civicdataecosystem.org, so you can go there to check it out. And the purpose of the analysis was just to attempt to get a better understanding of the CKAN instances that are out there. How big are they? Where are they located? How long have they been in use? Are they still in use? Are they still updated? Questions like that. The analysis was performed on URLs that by and large came from two sources, datashades.info and dataportals.org. The URLs from those two sites were checked internally for duplicates to make sure, they were only one per list, and then it was cross-checked against each other. And that yielded, I think, about 1,000 URLs. And then additionally, our team added a few URLs to that list. I think it was 5 that we had just found over the course of doing some of this work. And before I get into anything else, just a couple quick notes about the sort of limitations or caveats on this. One being that all these results are very much a snapshot in time. They're largely based on API calls that were made. And so if an instance has gone offline or wasn't online and has since come back, or issues like that, these results may be different than they appeared at the time the analysis was performed. Additionally, again, it only draws from those sources that I mentioned. So this is not the 100% definitive list of CKAN information and data. And then finally, some of the pieces of information relied on proxies from the API pieces of data, and I'll point those out as it goes along. So to start, data sets per instance was examined, and that was done using the API call for package list. 376 of the instances had a valid response to that API call. The median number of packages for the group was 242. And as you can see, about 72% of the instances had 1,000 data sets or fewer. There are 10 that had 50,000 or more data sets, and the largest CKAN instance had 1.12 million data sets, the B2Find research publication data portal. We looked at the location of instances. This was a manual analysis. It was just done by looking at the top level domain as a proxy for location. So for example, if a website was .co.uk, that would be considered a UK site, .ca is Canada, .ee is Estonia, et cetera, et cetera. And .com and .org websites were quickly manually checked for the content on the site to see if the location could be easily determined. For the purposes of this, regional or multinational portals were excluded because we just kind of wanted to see where the instances was physically being launched from, and that sort of, I didn't want to be the determining factor of that, determining that one. And again, this was just a quick analysis. So all of that said, instances were found in 59 countries, Brazil being the leading one, USA in second place. And you can kind of see quickly there's a wide distribution, but instances were found on 6 continents, none on Antarctica yet, but maybe someday soon. We looked at the age of instances. That was done using the current package list with resources API call. We checked for the oldest metadata creation date as a proxy for the launch. We also, for another analysis that was used around age, we also looked at the last edited date. And so for this and the next slide, I only looked at instances that had both a valid metadata creation date and a valid last edited date. That was 347 of the 381 of them. And you can see here then the distribution of when they were launched based on that proxy, the bulk of them being around 2017, 2018, with 56, 55 portals being launched in those years. I also looked at the lifetime of the instance. This was to kind of get a sense of whether portals were, still in use, if people were still updating them, or if they had just been launched and then sort of remained dormant and untouched after the point of launch. So to do that, we considered the last edited date, subtracted that from the creation date, and then divided that by today's date minus the metadata creation date. So if it was the same, if the day that they last edited was today, that ratio would be 1. If they had only, say, edited it last year, if it was up for 2 years, that would be 0.5. So that gives you a sense of what that percent means. And so on average, they are frequently being used and updated. Almost every year, it's above 0.8 or higher, or it is 0.8 or higher. A few outliers there, but to me, that sort of says that, yeah, CKAN instances are being used and updated. And then finally, we took a look at the CKAN version as well. 362 instances had information about the version they were using. I mentioned this earlier, and I can say this definitively, that data has definitely changed since the analysis was conducted. Because if nothing else, our office has since updated to 2.10. We had not at the time this was performed. So there are at least 2 now, but there are likely others as well. So yeah, that is a very quick look at that, as I said, and the text can be found on the website if anyone wants to read into it more.
Yeah, and we'll post that link for you. So thanks so much, Ross, for doing that. And I'll move on to something that Sammy did, if you're ready, Sammy. We kind of thought about, like, what is the timeline of the work in the CKAN ecosystem, and have kind of talked about that a bit. And Sammy came back to one of the meetings recently, was just something that was really fantastic, and just wanted to provide an opportunity to share that. And this will probably be something that we turn into a blog post at some point soon. So Sammy, if you're ready.
Yep, thank you, Bob. So let me share my screen. Okay, so like as Bob said, as part of the post project, we wanted to create a user-friendly way to see the history of all versions of CKAN. So as part of our engineering presentations every month, what we do is we ask engineers to present what they did in the last month. So last month, for the month of June, one of our engineers, Moise, created this presentation in a timeline format. So we all liked it so much, so we decided to use this tool called timeline.js, which is open source, to create this CKAN releases starting from 0.1 version. So let's dive into this blog post. So what we did is we created this timeline, and then using this timeline, we created a blog post summarizing and highlighting some of the major releases of CKAN from version 0.1, where the birth of CKAN, and like again going to version 1, which is the solid foundation after a couple of years. And this version also saw the release of data.gov.uk, and then following multiple versions for 1.1, 1.2 to 2, which was a major milestone with significant architectural overhaul of the CKAN system. And then going through to version 2 to version 2.9, where like CKAN replaced this web framework from pylons to Flask, and with support of Python 3, and also had a lot of improvements. And then again, continuing the journey is like 2.10 and onwards. So basically, like CKAN has come a long way since its inceptions, and is continuously evolving to meet the growth of open data. We have been part of the open data ecosystem for past 10 plus years, as Joel said before. So I'll just dive all these links to these versions. These are the major versions, or like summarized versions. Will take you to the timeline version which we created. I'll go through the timeline version. In this version, as you can see, we have the detailed releases of CKAN, where you can, once if you see the 0.1 version, it talks about all the details about the changelog from what was done from 0.1 and going to different versions. What we did is this, like here in this version, in this timeline, we have color coded from 0.1 to 1 version, and then from version 1 to 2 and 2. So in this one page, you can see the whole history of CKAN for 17 years, and then you can see how the frequency of development happened from 0.1 version to 1, and then you can see the frequency has increased for the version 1, and then later on you can see how these versions, like the release and frequency of the development, happened in the version 2 of these CKAN releases. So like if these icons, when you see these icons of CKAN, these are the icons which we talked about in our blog post, where you can see the details. And then also here in one of the interesting point we can see is like on one same day, there were multiple releases. Same day where new release was released, and also to support the older releases, other bug releases and other releases for the previous version of CKAN was released. So in a nutshell, like this view gives a much user-friendly way to see the 17-year history of CKAN and how it's been developed and how it's going to be developed in future. So we'll continue to update this timeline going forward. And then I just want to talk about like how we did this. This timeline is powered by timeline.js, and it's powered by the Google spreadsheets, where we have got the text, scraped the text using a Python script from the changelog.csv, converted into HTML format, and then put it in this Google spreadsheet, and which powers this timeline.js. So we will write a detailed blog post about how we did it and open source the tools like Python scripts and other tools which is powering this timeline.js. So you can view this blog post. We just posted it today, and which has the timeline as well.
Thank you, Sim. That's great. And I think that timeline is going to really help contextualize everybody's experiences in the CKAN ecosystem when they joined, and the kind of things that happen. So that's really been important for us to kind of think about as we've talked to people that have had such a long history here, and all of the different changes in the product and evolutions and things. So that's really helpful. And so now I'll turn it over to Liz Monk, my colleague at Pitt, who's been really involved in developing a lot of the sense-making workshops. And Joel, feel free to jump in too, because you and Liz have been like a dynamic team in putting these workshops together, and it's been great to see you work together.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, so over the past month, we've held multiple sense-making workshops, and we've been sharing some of what we've found from the interviews that we've conducted over the past year. So based on those findings, we chose some themes to focus the sessions on. So onboarding new contributors, adoption and maintenance of CKAN, community building, and then an open session. So through these workshops, we've shared findings from Dr. Silva's analysis, and then we've gathered more feedback and asked attendees to work together to brainstorm scaffolding, so processes, activities, other ways that can support the strength of the ecosystem. We've found that people have gotten value of sharing with each other, so a place to share their experience, learn what others have been up to, and making new connections. And we've completed the first 3, but there is still time for you to join the last one, which will be happening next week. And this is open, so kind of what we have missed. We want to gather people's thoughts and get more feedback, and I'll put all of this in the chat.
Yeah, and
we are sharing we're sharing the recap of the first 2 so far. So I will also, we've just posted that as the blog. So if you weren't able to attend, you want to see what people are putting, and you want to add your thoughts, you'll be able to.
And there's still time
to also, oh, sorry, Bob.
Oh, go ahead, Joel. I just want to remind people that we still have time if they wanted to join us next week. That would be great.
Yeah, please do, actually. And also, I just wanted to call out that we use a lot of material from the National Science Foundation. You know, when we got the grant, we conducted workshops ourselves as grantees with the National Science Foundation. They engaged some people who actually, as a full-time job, help open source projects evolve. So they developed a lot of materials from which we gleefully borrowed. And all the accreditations and all that stuff will be included in our findings when we publish them.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that kind of, I don't think I missed anything in terms of our broad overview of our work to date. I just want to acknowledge Dr. Nora Mattern couldn't join us today, but she's been an instrumental part of the project too. So maybe I'll just start with a little bit of discussion and just throw this question to Joel. And for you, and maybe this is a question that others can think about too, just in your role that you play in the ecosystem, what was it like through this process to kind of take a step back and a broader view of the ecosystem? And Sammy, please jump in too.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in the ecosystem for a while. When we started our open data journey, like 12 years ago. And to be honest, we basically fell into the CKAN ecosystem accidentally. Basically, what we were trying to do was basically build a knowledge base, a graph of all the open data in New York City to make it usable, because it's just all raw data. And when we were curating the data and extracting all the metadata, we said, well, we need to park this data somewhere. And people shouldn't need to do all this data wrangling over and over again. So that's how we got into CKAN. And over the years, we've been involved in the ecosystem, and pivoted our startup to basically helping jurisdictions with their CKAN implementations, and that's how we started working with your team, Bob. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and we got acquired by a Silicon Valley startup, Sammy and I, and now that's one of the largest operators of CKAN in the U.S., OpenGov. But Sammy and I still wanted to do some other things. That's why we are at it again as entrepreneurs, doing that here. And one of the goals that we have is we see a lot of potential in the CKAN ecosystem that's largely untapped, and we want to, help achieve that goal. And it just so happened that this NSF opportunity presented itself, and we were fortunate that you found that, Bob, and you chose to involve us in the project.
Well, you encouraged us. You encouraged us to apply. I was like, should we do this? We don't have the relationships to pull it off, but you did, and we're grateful for that. But yeah, I just wanted to say, what was it like for people in this ecosystem to kind of take a step back and see things maybe outside your role or from a different perspective, and we'd encourage you to just take a look at the materials we've put out so far. But just wanted to throw that out as a question and maybe kick off some conversation.
Yeah, I mean, just to maybe add some more twist, at this time when CKAN's future is also being really looked at by Alex and the stewards, with CKAN 3.0, I think this project also comes at a great time, because we have almost parallel efforts that kind of dovetail together, and yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know Alex or if anybody that's been here that we've kind of called out in the work, stewards or anybody that just wanted to comment on kind of how this project has maybe led you to kind of think about things in maybe a different way or in a more expanded way.
Sorry, is my mic working now?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Sorry, I think I was talking before and I was talking into a void of nothingness. Yeah, Bob, I was going to answer your original questions. So the perspective shift for me was just great because we were working with Alex. We were for the last year sort of working with the tech team, talking with end users, trying to map out requirements and trying to map out sort of solutions against potential requirements, all that kind of stuff. So the normal product development, the community aspect and the mapping of the community, the pathways for open source ecosystems was a good and I think necessary approach. I think one of the things that any kind of movement needs or any large body of people, it's not just kind of like the technical direction or a kind of functional direction. It's a general sense of balance, and it's a general sense of sort of community and purpose that you can kind of all join to. And so I think for me, the experience of going through this was just affirming that balance and recognizing the direction that we're all leaning into. And I think that will reinforce the kind of technical work as well. And basically everything seems to be coming together at the moment. There's a lot of work that's occurred, as we just saw with the timeline, over several years. A lot of really good built up ways of working in cadence within the project. And we've been attempting to attach on other things or bolt on other capabilities many times in the past and again, most recently. And I do think that we've kind of created a lot of potential energy. We've moved a lot of water uphill. It's sitting in a lake, and it could turn into a whole lot of hydro if we let it run through a turbine. So this process is just one of those ways that we can funnel that energy, just as Alex's work is one of those ways, just as the CKAN Monthly Lives with more engagement and more community building is another one of those ways. So a lot of streams coming together. And I think, you know, my question back to you would be, what do you need next from the community in terms of confidence in what you're going to pitch for the next stage? Big ticket items, I imagine.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I think, you know, I think like we'll come back with the workshop next week. So definitely make it there if you can. We're going to kind of cover your future vision a little bit and maybe shift gears from what, you know, more specific themes to more just general, what do you want to see the future and how does CKAN fit into that open future? But I think also like we're going to put some ideas out, like some things that we've thought about, and from the NSF conversations and conversations with some of the other grantees under this project, like what are some things that the ecosystem could include? How do we include that into the proposal with the NSF funding guidelines and things like that? So we're going to want to, you know, also share back, here's what we think we can put into this proposal for it to be successful. And we appreciate everything that everybody's done to contribute so far and are looking for you to give us some additional feedback on that too.
Yeah, cool. So I'll reshare some of my feedback on what I think I really want to get into the project. I guess it's the next stage is some of that purpose. It was good to see in the first document shared around values. I think it was a section there, or affinity. I think that's a key thing, that when you want to exercise informal control over a structure such as an open source project, you really need strong values and strong purpose to align all the players. You kind of need social proof and social sort of monitoring of good actors, and everyone kind of toes the line, not because there's sort of pressure, social pressure, there's just good guidance. There's good mentors, there's good sort of examples out there. So we need to attract the right people and make sure that they feel psychologically safe to make mistakes, supported in their successes, but ultimately aligned around a purpose. I really do think that right now we're in a special time with regard to the kinds of things that open data and data management platforms should be providing to society through projects like open source, open data platforms. So whether you're fighting disinformation, building public trust in public institutions, fighting against misinformation that is out in the general public, data has a really important place in that sort of fight. And it doesn't have to be an aggressive fight. It is a fairly passive, liberal democratic type of fight of just putting it out there and allowing it to be available for people. So a purpose driven by that kind of activity, that kind of for good infrastructure that kind of digital public good. I think that's a really good purpose for us to be working towards. There is still, a fight and survive, a competitive nature to any technology project. There's also the, the tech direction is basically also kind of a kind of the lifeblood of the project as well, in terms of people's interests in investing their technical futures, their kind of time and effort and their learning capability in a particular path. So all of these things are important, but I think the social purpose of the project is super important as well.
Thanks. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? And Joanna, I know we're getting into the last 10 minutes, so feel free to.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't want to interrupt the discussion, so we can continue. And since we have a recording, people can watch it later on. And then, of course, everyone can feel free to drop if they need to do something else. So yeah, if the speakers are fine, we can overrun a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I just want to see if there are any other questions that came from anybody, any observations that you've had, and maybe any hopes that you see. Anything that sparked anything here today?
Thanks for the question. I really tried not to pop up, as I'm usually is around. So maybe anyone else. If not, I'm moving on. Okay.
We're always happy to hear you, so you can share your thoughts, and then maybe the other folks will gain some braveness while you're talking, and they will comment.
Yeah,
Hi.
please. Yeah.
Yes, if I would like to say a few words, if you don't mind. I'm using CKAN quite a long time, but I should what I should want to say that we should look at the eyes of the truth and to understand that CKAN is not the only data portal, data catalog software in the world, open source. And what I see from my monitoring of all data catalogs around the world, there is a huge growing number of geo network data catalogs, lots of geo data catalogs, lots of scientific open data repositories. We could consider them not competing with CKAN, since they have a bit different market shares. But at the same time, they're competing, since I see some countries replacing CKAN with different solutions, or they have some in-house development, or they replace existing commercial solutions with CKAN. So it's it's working in two ways. But I don't see any monitoring. I've seen Data Shades project and other projects. They just monitor existing installation, and not all of them. Since, for example, about a month ago, we did total DNS monitoring. We collected all data from countries' DNS servers and found a lot of unknown SCAN installations. Well, quite a lot, but nobody knows about them. They don't register them anywhere, and so on. I think that it's quite an important question of CKAN usage right now, since what I see is that the government transparency is a bit stalled in the world, and it's growing only in a few countries, and it is quite authoritative countries like China. They have lots of open data portals, but only a few of them are CKAN installations. And there is a huge and growing movement of open research data, but I don't see CKAN in this trend. Not at all, but it's only a few installations of CKAN use it to publish open research data. Instead, most of the countries and the institutions use CRIS systems, like current research information systems, or they use very dedicated solutions like Convenio RDM or Dataverse. And there is a geodata, and it was like S3, it was like Geo Network, it's GeoNode installations. There are about 1,000 of them in the world, maybe more. I can't yet detect all of them, but I have a huge list. And I see how vendors that were related to the geodata only, like S3, where replace actually open data portals of the cities of some regions with geodata portals, but we replace open data portals. So we promote it as open data portals. It's not the same transparent like CKAN. I don't really like the solutions, but we exist. So I think we need to understand not only CKAN role, but open data portals role, and it should be more featured to help with any of the trends, or it should be very narrow but ideally shaped for some topic. And I'm not sure that open government data is an ideal topic right now, since right now I don't see only open data on sub-regional levels. There are some countries without sub-regional portals, but on the national level, about every country they have in-house or CKAN installation. So I think that redreaming how CKAN will change the world is an important topic. Thank you for your attention.
No, thanks. Yeah, that's something that we've had some conversations about, like what is the CKAN kind of value proposition to different open initiatives and different open projects around the world, and like open science, and it is just one of those that we've looked at. And I think like that's something we can explore, maybe including some of that in the work that we're doing. Other thoughts?
Oh, just wanted to acknowledge about that. I think there's a need for coordination of all the activities. Just one thing that I just wanted to let Ivan know, that we know about the gap in the spatial capabilities of CKAN, and there are active projects right now that are trying to address that, and a lot of them will be contributed back. So just to let you know.
Yeah, I'd want to just remind everyone of a couple of things about CKAN. It is 100% open source, 100% kind of driven by the supply side of the enthusiastic contributors and the supply side of the enthusiastic adopters of CKAN, the early adopters and the long-time users as well. So the full history of open data catalogs and jurisdictional open government data catalogs is still kind of part of the DNA of CKAN. And that kind of perennial longevity, you can't really replace easily. So we do have a defensible position as a product, and we have a defensible community and a defensible sense of practice, is what I'd say. And I think that's almost like an aesthetic. And you kind of think of like the construction industry or building a home or a community. There are many, many, many ways to build a community and build a home, or to follow an aesthetic. In IT, in data management practices, we will see many rises of many different competing approaches and many falls of things that fall flat for lots of different reasons. But on balance, CKAN has a lot of strengths, a lot of things holding it up. And our job is just to focus on the strengths and route around the weaknesses, and make sure that we are always setting the sail so that we will be moving forward on those strengths. And I think that's the kind of practice that we've got going on at the moment with the POSE work, with the product ownership work, with the strong connection between users and the tech team, the strong commitment of support and sustainability of the project from the tech team. I mean, that group of people have been carrying this project for so many years without fail. And we just saw the timeline again. What other project has got that without millions of dollars pumping into it? It is attention and it's care. And you just don't get that. So every time I talk about CKAN with a potential customer, especially customers that I think are cool and I like them, I say, if you want a project that you can really put your care and attention into, and it will never go away from you. It will never sort of cheat on you, as it were, and it'll never disappoint you is probably the best word. It'll never go in the wrong direction because it's got VC money and it suddenly has to return 10x of that in some sort of capitalized way. CKAN's the product. CKAN is the thing that you can build upon for years and years into the future. And that's an undeniable strength.
Thanks, Stephen. I think we all agree with what you just said. Is there any other comments? Maybe Alex, you can go now.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. I'm really keen. I was really keen to read the research findings. I found them revealing in terms of analysis of the active instances, first and foremost, and the rate for updates to latest versions. It created several hypotheses on and conversations, actual discussions that we had on the GitHub on whether it's okay, whether it was intended to be, that it's possible. So it's a backwards compatibility. It's possible to work. It's okay, I would like to say, not to update. It's still possible to run the not the latest version and sort of be fine. All the same time, how we can speed up and support the process of updating the CKAN instances to the latest versions. So this was really positive ignition point around updates. This was the first thing that I took right away. I found several connections to the research that that we did for the CKAN 3.0. That was quite interesting to see the information from different standpoints as also beneficial. Yeah, I was really enjoying discussions that was happening as we're moving to the stage where the roadmap for the CKAN 3.0 was formed and discussed what it will be. So going to more practical side of things. And in this regard, I'm also really interested in how do you see the next steps, what happens then, and how we can kind of tie together findings and the actual things that we can do for the ecosystem and the community and the product. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, and I would say just in terms of next steps, like since we're running short on time here, please provide comments in the blog post that we have there with the summaries of the workshops and also the interviews. And you know, come to the workshops next week if you can make it. We'd love to see you there. We're going to talk a lot about kind of open ideas for the future that you'd like to see, and the role that CKAN plays in that. And you can also reach out to us too. I don't have the email address for the account, but I'll pull that up in a second. Don't want to mistype it or give you the wrong one.
Okay, I can also drop it in chat if you cannot find it quickly. Do we have any other comments? Are we ready to wrap it up? Maybe we can give people around 20 seconds if they want to come up with a question or something. I can see Stephen.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
So my quick announcement, sorry. So I got accepted to go to OGP, which is awesome, in Tallinn in Estonia. So that's Open Government Partnership. And I understand Open Knowledge is also going to be there, or at least they're going to be hosting an event there on the 4th of September. So there should be some good CKAN representation. I'm hoping that Alex will be able to get over for a late invitation to the OGP as well. If anyone else is going, I guess let us know. And it'd be great to see people there. It is a bit difficult to register because it closed on the 28th of May for an event that's in September. But if you know someone in the Open Government Partnership in your local area, you might be able to get a kind of a way in through civil society. Yep, Patricia is in. Okay, for going.
Yeah, and one last thing, if I could just say thanks to the team that joined us today. So been working with some great people on this project, and I appreciate y'all. And everybody that contributed to us through workshops, interviews, and thoughts.
Joanna even had a slide prepared.
Yes.
Wow. It was on the agenda, was it? Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. 10 more seconds for last questions or comments or anything. And then we can move to closing. Okay, 15 more seconds. I know you need some time. Today, people are more shy than usual.
Hello?
Okay, yes, we can hear you.
Oh yeah, sorry. So I was just hoping to because it's I just stumbled upon it, and I was hoping to like have a data catalog for my organization. I was just asking whether it is completely free to use.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then with regards to the limitation of how, like, what size of data set are you allowed to deposit in the repository?
Hundreds of thousands without any problem.
So if you go to CKAN.org/community, you will find very useful links where you can ask information that you want related to CKAN. For example, you can go to the Gitter chat. There are many people who are actively responding to questions, so you can just put your question there and you will find support.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, are there any other questions or comments?
Just want to say thank you, Joanna, too. I wanted to include you in that for hosting these.
Thanks. Okay, so let's then go to closing round. Where's my camera off? Okay, okay, cool. Okay. All right, so closing round. I just want to reiterate once again that the last workshop will be next week. There is a link in the presentation that you see on screen. It's available in the meeting notes document, so you can find the link there and you can find it very easy. The next thing Stephen already announced. I was about to announce that there is the OGP conference running in September. And if people want to find out more information, they can just go to the link. There is a link in the presentation. Follow the link, you find more information. But basically, it's a global summit. It will unite global leaders, civil society representatives, policymakers, and the discussion will be around open government in the digital age. Estonia has a very successful e-governance model, and I'm sure they will be offering very insightful learnings. If you want to have a talk at CKAN Monthly Live, there are two ways you can apply. Let's say you can fill out the form. It's available in the meeting document, or you can write directly to me. If you want to suggest a topic, if you want us to explore something, you can add your suggestion in our suggestions for topics and speakers document, which is also available in the chat. We have a newsletter, as you know. You can subscribe for our newsletter. Just follow the link that you see on screen. And as I already said several minutes ago, if you need any kind of help with CKAN, or if you want to get involved with the project, contribute, there is a very active community. All the links are available on our CKAN.org website. Just go to CKAN.org/community. And of course, you can follow us on on all our social media channels. Now, before we say goodbye, I just want to say something. CKAN Monthly Live will be taking a pause in August to recharge and plan for upcoming sessions. This is our usual practice. If you remember, we usually take December and August. That's like a ritual. So when we resume in September, we are going to have Civic Data Lab. They will be sharing very interesting stuff around the Justice Hub. It's an online platform committed to advancing justice, equality, human rights. They might also be sharing some insights on some of their other CKAN instances they're managing for community projects. So yeah, do not forget to tune in. It will be exciting for sure. Okay, and thanks to the whole POSE project team. Thanks for the active participation. It was really a pleasure, and I do find your work really useful. I'm sure we'll come up with some interesting insights on the way forward. So
Thanks.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's it. Thank you again.
Oops. Thanks, folks. Bye.
Okay.
Take care. See you next week.
See ya.
See you at the
Bye-bye.
workshop.